So some of the research that's come out about the cause of muscle dysmorphia has come from brain imaging and neuroscience. And what our team did was we collected the biggest sample of body dysmorphic disorder and muscle dysmorphia neuroimaging data. And what we did was we analysed it and compared it to people without muscle dysmorphia or body dysmorphic disorder. And what we found was that the part of the brain involved with error signals, this is the part of the brain that lights up when something's gone wrong and we think something's wrong, something's not right. What we find is that with people with muscle dysmorphia, this part of the brain is lighting up for almost all of the day. And what this means is that people with muscle dysmorphia are misattributing this error signal in their brain to, I'm not big enough, I'm not muscly enough, something's wrong with my body. And so they can end up comparing themselves, looking at the mirror and thinking, oh, something's wrong, I'm not big enough. Some of the other research findings from this brain imaging data is that people with muscle dysmorphia aren't very good at integrating detailed visual analysis with holistic visual analysis. And so what this means is that people with muscle dysmorphia can just look at one aspect of their appearance without integrating it to the whole. So while they might look at their bicep and say, that's way too small, if they actually looked at their bicep in comparison to the rest of their body, they'll be like, well, it's big enough compared to the rest of my body. But they tend to look at body parts separate from the whole of their body. And the reason why they do this is a part of the brain called the Corpus Callosum, which connects the left-hand side of the brain with the right-hand side of the brain. The left-hand side of the brain is associated with detailed visual analysis, and the right-hand side of the brain is about integrating that into a holistic picture. And if the corpus callosum isn't communicating information between the left and the right, it means that they'll get fixated on small aspects of their appearance rather than seeing the bigger picture and having perspective. The other really interesting neuroimaging result is in terms of how people with muscle dysmorphia relate to other people. What we've found is that people with this disorder will often misinterpret facial expressions and perceive other people to be angry or aggressive, even though their facial expression is neutral. And we found this by flashing up pictures of angry faces or neutral faces while people were in an MRI machine. And we found that the amygdala, the emotional part of the brain, was hyperactive, whether we showed them emotional faces, angry faces, or neutral faces. And so what this might mean in practical terms is when these people are working out at the gym, where they're pumping iron, and they see someone walk past, they'll think, that person just looked at me in an angry or a judging way. And then they'll think, because they've got this error message in their brain, they'll think, and that means something's wrong with me, and it must mean because I'm not muscly enough.
That's super interesting. That sounds like pretty forefront kind of research by the sounds of it. In terms of that second thing you were talking about, connecting the left side with the right side, or really any of those findings, how does that then change your practices? How does that research kind of come into your practical clinical?
Yeah, so I mean we can collect neuroimaging data and know intimately what's happening in the brain. And for me, what this changes in terms of my clinical practice and working with these people in terms of psychotherapy is, well, firstly, we've got a really good basis to know what's happening. And so patients find this very reassuring when we know what's happening. Plus we know what activities, what exercises can reverse these brain changes. Neuroplasticity means that the brain is constantly changing, and depending on what behaviors we do and what we pay attention to, our brain will change. And for many people with muscle dysmorphia who have been doing repetitive and ritualistic behaviors around building muscle mass, what they're doing is they're not only training their muscles, they're also training their brain to pay attention to particular things. And by retraining the brain through changing behaviors, changing thought patterns, we can relieve muscle dysmorphia.